others, right? But I want, let's assume this is for your kids, I want you to have them play these games with a little notebook next to them. And every time they finish one of the games, I want them to stop and be metacognitive. I want them to stop and think, what is the strategy I just used to win this game? And where in the real world do I use that exact same strategy? Right? Well, yeah. And I'll give you an example of why that, what that looks like and why it's helpful. So, for instance, one of the games on Lumosity, a bird will flash somewhere on the screen, and the number flashes right in the middle. And you have to identify what was the exact spot of the bird and what was the number. So my strategy is I'll stare at the middle, and I use my peripheral vision to kind of pick up where the bird is. And it works really well. So I think, where in the real world would I do the same thing? Well, when I'm driving a car, I use that exact same strategy. If I'm playing basketball, I use that exact same strategy. So what I'm doing is I'm stopping, I'm thinking about what I did, I'm thinking about where it applies. Now, this is really challenging for a kid who has executive functioning difficulties to be able to do this, right? If you go to the gym and you have really weak muscles and you start lifting weights, what's going to happen? Well, first it's going to be hard. It's going to hurt. You're going to be sore. You're not going to want to go back. But if you keep going and you keep going, eventually the muscles adapt. They get stronger and they work better. And the brain works in the exact same way. The reason for doing Lumosity in this way, and it's not just Lumosity, you can do this with any game. I mean, we all solve problems all day long. Anytime you're solving a problem or your kid is solving a problem, having them stop and think, what is the strategy and where do I use it in the real world? And the reason for this, let's take an example. So, go back to Johnny. So Johnny loves video games, right? Johnny plays video games all the time. So Johnny has in his head this giant footlocker labeled video games. And it is filled with some killer strategies for playing video games. Because he loves playing, he hyper-focuses when he does it, he's really passionate about it, and he does it all the time, he spends all his energy, right? Great strategies for video games. Now those strategies in that box are the same strategies that can help Johnny take a test and do well in school and get along with others and do well in life. The problem is because of those executive difficulties, it's almost like there's a big fat padlock on that footlocker. And the only time Johnny puts the key in there is when his Xbox remote's in his hand. He never applies those strategies anywhere else. So the idea behind doing something like Lumosity or any other kind of cognitive challenge with this set of structures is to, metaphorically speaking, get him to go around his head and start unlocking all those footlockers so that he can see those things. And the brain's a very funny organ in that if you give it a message to work in a different way on a consistent basis, it eventually kind of says, okay, and it just works that way. Right? So in doing these sort of executive skill tests where they're stopping and being metacognitive, thinking about strategy application, thinking about how these sets of problems interact with others, you're actually building those executive skills from the inside out. Because an organized mind leads to an organized backpack, an organized box. It doesn't work the other way around, as some of you have seen with your executive function.
If you were to take a step back from there, how do you encourage that kind of mindset? Because I can picture my son staring at this game going, I just did it. You know, I don't see how he would be able to.
You have to train it through scaffolding. Okay? Does everyone in here know what scaffolding is? Yeah, anybody not know what scaffolding is? Okay, so picture a building that's under construction, there's scaffolding on the front, right? And you're up at the top of the scaffolding and you're reaching down, and your kid is down at the bottom, and they're going, Mom, Dad, help me, help me, help me. Well, scaffolding is not reaching down and pulling them up. It's reaching down and giving them the tip of your pinky so they can pull themselves up. And so in this type of test, you really want to take a scaffolding approach where you're asking questions that will lead them to it without getting overly frustrated. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
And so, again, this doesn't have to be just with Lumosity. This can be done with all kinds of different things. Okay? So let's move on to another thing, something called guided meditation. How many people in here have practiced guided meditation? You've done all this stuff. Nobody else in this room has practiced guided meditation?
No, I don't practice it.
How come? Why?
I think about everything that I have to do while I'm doing it.
Okay. So it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've tried it, but it's just difficult. Okay. So the act of guided meditation is literally just practicing not following your thoughts. Okay? When someone has the style of brain that we're talking about, where they're processing everything, it's really hard to filter stuff out, they are paying attention to absolutely everything. And it's almost like there's an analogy that one of the meditation apps uses. It's almost like we're inside their head. We're standing on the side of the road. And there's cars and trucks flying by, right? They're peeking into every single window that goes by. Hey, what's going on, guys? What if you guys take your food, you shoot smoke? They check them all out. And for some kids, they're filled with a lot of negative thoughts too, and they're checking those negative thoughts out. Practicing guided meditation actually kind of teaches you to stand on the side of the road and let them go by. Another analogy that kind of relates to this is if you think about a dog on one of those 50 feet retractable dog leashes, okay? When that dog is all the way out there, you have very little control over it, okay? And that's how focus works for most people who have been given this label. But if you bring that dog in and you let it go a little at a time, you have much more control. The act of guided meditation actually trains you to bring your focus in and use it where and when you need it when you're not as interested in something. It's not a novel task. But both this and the idea of the strategies around lumosity are something that have to be done regularly and consistently. Okay? So oftentimes with adults, I'll get adults in my office and I'll do an evaluation. I'll send them off and say, I'll see you in 3 weeks, we're going to go over the feedback. And we all know that they meet the criteria for ADHD, we've discussed it, they're aware of it, right? And I'll say to them, try these 2 things, okay? The lumosity, the guided meditation. When you come back, I'm going to ask you how they're going, okay? So half of the people, approximately, will come back to me, oh my God, Dr. Goldstein, this is amazing. Where were you when I was a little kid? This is awesome stuff. And the other half come back and say, look, I have the app on my phone. Right? So part of the issue with someone who has this style of brain, they can't get started, they can't initiate. It's really important to make it part of a schedule, to make it a habit, and to do it as consistently as possible. And if you do, it really does work. These 2 things are 2 of the most powerful things that you can actually be doing at home to build executive skills, to increase focus, and to reduce anxiety. And what we know is that people who do these things on a regular basis, we can actually see shifts in their brain function. The brain actually responds to this and works in a more efficient and effective way. All right, so that is sort of the stuff that you can be doing at home. It's really kind of a short focus on that. There's also a really cool technology that's extremely useful for this style of brain. It's something called neurofeedback. Anyone in here besides Scott familiar with neurofeedback?
Yes.
Okay, so as I mentioned before, our brains are the series of nerves that send electrical signals. Okay, we can read the matrix of electrical output, what's called a quantitative EEG of a brain. And what that is we put something that looks like a swimmer's cap on your head, and it measures out the electrical activity at 19 different sites on the brain. And we can look, are the regions communicating the right way? Are they producing the right frequencies, the right patterns, the right hertz, the right amplitude? Certain conditions we often see very common patterns. Someone who's been diagnosed with ADHD, when we take a look at their brain, most often they have a lot of theta wave activity in the frontal lobe of their brain. The frontal lobe is where all those executive skills are housed. Theta is a very slow, sleepy, dreamlike brainwave. If you're putting that out up here all day, it's loud, okay? And it makes it really hard to focus. Now, people who have a lot of anxiety, people who have hyperactivity, we tend to see spots of this high beta wave activity. High beta is a very fast spindling wave. So if you've ever laid in bed and you're thinking about something over and over and over and over, it's your brain making a lot of this high beta wave activity. But the cool thing again is because the brain is plastic, you can train this stuff. So what that training actually looks like is once you've done this quantitative EEG and identified what's going on, you do a series of sessions. And you basically sit in front of the computer and play a game with your mind. Okay? So the easiest one to explain is Pac-Man and so on, is that everyone knows Pac-Man. Okay? And we're going back to Johnny. Okay? Johnny's super hyper, can't focus at all, can't sit still. Johnny sits there, we connect these electrodes, he starts playing Pac-Man. If he's focused and relaxed, Pac-Man keeps going, gobbles up the dots, beeps away. Johnny starts fidgeting, Johnny loses focus, starts having anxious thoughts. The Pac-Man slows down, the beeping slows down. He's getting visual and auditory reminders of where his brain is going. And what ends up happening is, the first piece is that there's a mindfulness component. He's kind of learning, what does it feel like to be in this state? So that he can artificially replicate it elsewhere. The second piece is that it's through a series of sessions. Each session, the computer is basically saying to his mind, go this way, go this way, go this way. And eventually the brain responds and says, okay, most people, and we can actually measure those differences. Okay? And so this is one of those things like with doing lumosity, like with doing the guided meditation, where you're actually shifting how the brain is functioning and processing information for the rest of your life, rather than that sort of quick fix. Let's see, so I kind of went through the things I want to talk about. Let me open it up first to some questions about the things that I presented, and then I'd like to kind of introduce the team that I work with and open it up to other questions that are not necessarily directly related to what I presented tonight. Yeah.
I am intrigued by these methods, but my concern is from working with children for 20 years is that this guided meditation, luminosity, those kinds of techniques, I can't wrap my head around thinking that I could get a 7 to 14-year-old or even 16-year-old to really get the benefits of it.
To get the benefits of it, or to engage in it?
To engage in it, to get the benefits of it.
Part of it is that, you're absolutely right,
Yeah.
Part of it is that ownership piece.
Yeah.
Part of that is, what we know from the research is that long-term, rewards don't work to increase intrinsic motivation, okay? But they work awesome to get a kid with ADHD to do what you want to do in the short term if you know it's going to benefit.
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with setting up some sort of structured reward system for engaging in something that you know is really going to benefit them.
Okay.
right? And sometimes that's what's necessary. Okay, like, boy, this is something you do before you go and play football. And so, and a lot of that too with parents, this is kind of a spin-off from that, but parents, a lot of parents always complain about screen time, how much screen time, how much screen time, right? And a lot of parents use the screen time as a punishment as well. I'm taking it away, you're not getting it, you lost it, right? It's a much better approach to start with nothing and earn your screen time. Okay? If you did your Lumosity and guided meditation, then you can go play Fortnite when you're finished. If you finished all your homework and you did what you're supposed to do, you can go and play Minecraft, right? Where it's an earned thing rather than something that gets taken away because it wasn't finished. Because then you're back to that whole here's blue message. Lots of negativity. Right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's of course it's a struggle.
I mean, I can see an adult coming in and saying, "Oh, this meditation really worked for me."
You'd be surprised how many kids I can get a far more number of kids to do this stuff than adults. Because so many adults who have this, they're set in their ways. It's very different.
My son's 16 years old, and he actually discovered the meditation on Headspace app, and because he's in wrestling, so there was one match where he got tired and he lost, and so I'm like, maybe you're on your phone the whole night and you got tired because you do need to rest. So he's like, I'm like, I think I need. So that internal motivation kind of like led him, like, there's like guided meditation, there's some YouTube, and he said like, oh mom, I found something better.
Because he realized it would help.
Yes,
Yeah,
and he did. He wanted the next match, and then it motivated him more. So every night I had to knock on the door because he was like, I meditate.
And that's what I see a lot even with younger kids, is that once they do it a few times, and they really feel better, and they like it, and they start doing it. And it really does, and that, back to what you were saying, that a lot of times it's its own kind of motivation once you get going. I won't say the same for the Lumosity. That's a challenge, because if your muscles are really weak and you go to the gym, it's hard, it hurts, but it does get easier over time, so that's where if there's a lot of resistance, it's really important to incentivize that.
So I really do agree with a lot of what you're saying. There's the one medication piece that you kind of mentioned that sounded like I couldn't quite read that you weren't totally for medication.
So medication is one tool in a much larger toolbox of things that we can use to treat the ADHD style brain.
Right.
It should never be a first resort unless a child's behavior is a danger to themselves or others or they're at risk of failing out of school.
Okay.
It's a useful tool in the toolbox, but it should always be seen as something no more than a short-term bridge to work on all these other skills, because long-term it is not an intervention that's helpful. And so, am I anti-medication? No, it has its uses, it has its places. There are cases where I'll recommend to parents, let's try the medication as a short-term intervention while we work on these other things. But in most cases, and for most kids, it should not be a frontline treatment.
But don't you feel like it makes the kids more available to try these things?
Well, and that's why I say, if they're really in a bad place, either their emotions are really impacted by this, or they're really just unable to engage and totally disengage and completely unhelpless, in those cases it can be really useful. The problem is it's way overprescribed. And it's prescribed in cases where really a little bit of metacognition, a little bit of executive skill building, a little bit of guided meditation can really go a long way to help. Right? And again, the medication doesn't help the aspect that's actually causing these people functional issues, which is that executive skill set. But yes, it can help them engage in that, engage in those activities more to build those. The real issue with it is that most people, most parents and adults too, they take it and that's it. Like, that's the fix, I don't need to do anything else. That's very different from using it as a tool to allow you to better engage in executive skill building. And that's a hard mindset to shift, because the medication's quick and easy. Does that?
Yeah. And this is kind of a murky waters, but do you ever deal with kids or adults that take CBD oil that help?
Yeah, there's not a lot of research into CBD with ADHD. There's a little bit of research into the THC stuff with ADHD. There's not enough where at any point I would say you should go and try this. But with CBD oil, I mean, it's not going to hurt. But there's not enough research to support, let's go do this. There's starting to be more and more about the CBD and the THC side, and so we're looking at, the research is looking at that, but I wouldn't ever feel comfortable saying to someone, go try this. But I also wouldn't tell you, don't try it, it's not going to hurt.
And then, sorry, one other question. In terms of, I know you touched on a little bit, but like if kids that have emotional ability, they go from like 0 to 60, and like one task that you might ask them to do, even if it's something that they're fairly good at, can cause them to get tears or lash out.
Totally dysregulated.
Yes,
Yeah.
do you have any, we've tried for like,
So I think first of all, they need to understand what's happening to them, right? If they're being dysregulated, they need a language around it. You're dysregulated right now. The other thing is, for parents, misery loves company, right? So when your kid is dysregulated, they're going to do every darn thing they can to dysregulate you. And they're smart and they know you, so they can push those buttons, right? So the first piece is not letting yourself get dysregulated when they're dysregulated, because that's the biggest pitfall, right? And so just recognizing that and not doing that. But the second piece is giving them a language around it and giving them options for how to better deal with it. So, perfect example, I have a son who, when he was younger, would tantrum forever, right? And he would just go on and on, and they were totally outsized tantrums. And so sometimes I would just hold him and I would say, Ben, you're not regulated right now, I'm gonna hold you until you're feeling better. And if that didn't work, I would have him go in his room. Go in your room now until you're feeling better. But I wanted him to be aware and have the language around it. And what I loved was, and you're gonna laugh at this, so he used to, that's my brother. So he actually knows what I'm talking about. He said, like, these outsized tantrums from the smallest things would set him off. And one day he was me about 8 years old. And something happened, and I knew, I was just in my head, like, oh God, here we go, it's gonna be a whole hour of this. And he looked at me and he said, shh. I was like, I don't care what language it is. I finally learned to regulate and to not just have this outsized tantrum. So, yeah, it goes to some of it's developmental, right? But the key is giving them an understanding and a language around it so they know what's happening. And they have some options for how to
So are
do
you
it.
suggesting?
No.